Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. When the Whitburn Boys' Home opened in 1945, the government of Newfoundland felt its location in the countryside would provide an excellent opportunity for outdoor activities for the boys sent to get an education there. The reform school moved a few times before 13-year-old Jack Whalen came through its doors in 1973, but whatever those officials intended, his experience offered little in the way of opportunities, outdoor activities, or education. Jack spent 2 of his 4 years at Whitburn, 730 days, in a tiny cell in solitary confinement, not much bigger than the back of a pickup truck or a queen-size bed. The deprivation, beatings, and intimidation he experienced, and his longing for his family, drove him to escape 24 times. He has fought for compensation for years, a legal battle led by his daughter, lawyer Brittany Whalen, and Jack tells that story in a new book that he wrote with the celebrated Newfoundland author Lisa Moore. That book is called Invisible Prisons. Jack Whalen and Lisa Moore, good morning.
Thank you, Matt.
This is quite a story. How are you feeling, Jack?
Good.
Good? How does it feel to have this story out in the world?
It's out there. It's excellent to have it out there. It means quite a bit, actually. It took a long time to get this far, so I'm very, very, very happy to be where I am today.
And Lisa, what about for you? People know you for fiction. This is first nonfiction book. Why was it a story that you wanted to be involved in the telling of?
Well, I was just alerted by a colleague at the university that there was someone who wanted to tell a story, and I had a Zoom call with Brittany and Jack, and Jack did all the talking.
You didn't talk. You said for almost an hour, right? You just listened.
I kind of, that's my memory of it, and I just knew. I could see Jack's integrity. I could see his strength. I could see the importance of the story, and I just wanted in. I wanted to be able to write this story with him, but I've never written a book in less than 4 years, and I told the truth. I said it's going to take 4 years, and if you want to get some other writer, you can go ahead and do that, and I'll help you find someone. But then Brittany wrote back a while later and said, my father wants it in 2 years. I was like, oh my gosh. But we went ahead and did that pretty much. It feels like this book can be in the hands of many different kinds of people and mean something. I'm just thinking of the fact that Jack and Brittany did a visit to the 2 prisons in Kingston, and the men in Millhaven said the book changed their lives and said that they want to write now because they can see it as a road to healing. Yeah, it's very powerful.
This is your story, Jack, and it's the story of this place that shaped so much of your life. You ended up at Whitburn after some brushes with the law, and petty theft and mischief and a fight as well.
That's right, yes.
What do you remember about the day that you arrived there?
The biggest thing was I was only 13, so I remember him saying I was 97 pounds. You might as well put him down for 100. So they put me down for 100 pounds instead of 97. That's the first thing I remember about the place.
What did it look like when you came in? Do you remember what it looked like?
Pretty cold. Just a cold, damp feeling.
How long did you think you were going to be going there for?
I assumed I would be there for 2 or 3 months, and then they would let me go home because that's what they told me.
Yeah.
But shortly after I got there, they told me that since I don't have a father, my father died when I was 3, that I was there till I was 17, and that's when I told them that no, that's not going to happen.
They said that you're going to be here for good. When you heard that, I mean, what went through your mind? How did you feel hearing that?
I just said that there's no way in hell am I staying here till I'm 17. Even though I did, but I escaped so many times that I just had to get away, right?
Had you heard anything about this place before you got there?
Yes, I knew some people that were in there.
And what did you know about it?
I knew it wasn't a very fun place. I knew it was a lot of staff beating the guys and everything, and a lot of guys running away and stuff. I knew about the helicopters chasing the guys and the dogs chasing guys, skidoos, everything. Right?
So you knew what you were getting in for when you went there?
Yes.
Yeah. Lisa, tell us a bit about, you were able to piece together through stories that you gathered a bit about Jack's life at home before he got there. What was his life like?
Well, Jack's mother was a single mother because his father had died. There would be 8 children. I've talked to Jack's siblings, and everyone said that she was an incredibly dedicated mother. She was very loving. She loved those children. She did her best to take care of everyone, but she was on social assistance, although she worked when she could. And that means that you don't have access to certain resources. She didn't have a car to drive to Whitburn, and she did not know about legal aid. And imagine that. Imagine if you are busy raising that number of children and you go into court and nobody tells you you have a right to representation. So there was nothing. I think she must have felt very powerless. It was a family full of love, and she was very resourceful in terms of money, but, it's difficult. It's difficult.
What was, as you understand it, I said that the government of the day thought that this would provide an opportunity for outdoor activities for the boys who were sent to get an education in Whitburn. What was the goal in sending boys like Jack there, do you think?
Well, sometimes they had broken the law. Sometimes they were just taken from their parents because, mothers were deemed unfit. And it was often mothers. It was a way to just deal with children that needed extra care because of financial reasons or other reasons. So there were children in there who had no one on the outside who could watch for them.
Describe what life was like in Whitburn, Jack.
It was a nightmare most of the time, especially when you were locked up. And even when you weren't locked up, you were still locked in a room with, say, 20 other kids, the small room, and they would go to school and that, and you would be in the room, you'd have a man with you 24/7, right?
And violence was kind of unpredictable and everywhere, right? That's like right. It just seemed like the way that it's described in the book, it would just explode.
Yeah, that's right.
What was that like?
Well, you had to be on your toes just to keep ahead of it, right?
How would the violence erupt? What would happen that would lead to somebody being attacked or beaten?
Well, if you got up and turn the TV over, turn the channel on the TV, the staff member would get upset about that. If they give you 5 cigarettes a day to behave. If you didn't get any cigarettes and you managed to get a draw off somebody else, there'd be a smack in the head for that. There's always something, right?
And you go in as a young man. Did you get any school while you were there?
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
When the first month or two I was there, I was allowed to go to school, but after that I wasn't allowed.
You mentioned being in the room with 20 other kids. That would be one thing, but there was also solitary confinement, which is a huge part of your time there.
Yeah.
How did you end up in solitary confinement?
Every time you ran away, they would lock you up for first time probably 2 weeks, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 weeks, like that. So each time it would be longer.
What were those days like?
The most boring days of your life. There's no books, no absolutely nothing to do in the cell.
And they would take away your bed, right, so that you couldn't sleep in the middle of the day?
They'd take your bedding, your pillows, your bedding and everything, and mattress every morning, so you couldn't lie down.
Can you describe the cell? What did that cell look like that you were in?
It was 5.5 by 6.5.
You know exactly how big it was.
You could count the tiles on the floor. So 5.5 by 6.5. It was a concrete cell. No natural light or anything in there. Half the time you didn't know if it was daylight or not. Until you asked the guard, and their answer was always the same. What difference does it make to you what time it is?
And so as a 13 or 14-year-old, when you're there, what would be going through your mind as you're there for days on end?
Run away. Run away, that's the only thing I thought about.
The only thing while you were there that you could think about was getting out of there?
Getting out of there.
Yeah.
The only thing and everything. I had different ways to do it, how to do it without getting caught. I ran 24 times. Out of that, they managed to capture me with a helicopter once and a dog once. The other 22 times I got away.
Tell me about trying to get away. How would you do that?
I'd stay in the woods, and walk to St. John's. Most times I didn't have anything on my feet because I wasn't allowed to wear shoes or anything. So I'd start out with a pair of socks, but then the bottoms would wear out of your socks. So you just pull the top down, put a knot in the top, put a knot in it, pull your sock back on, and you at least have a little bit of sock to walk on for another bit, right?
That would be something that would cover your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they tried, in stories in the book of you were hiding like in a trench or something and the guard was chucking rocks down at you to try and get you out?
Big boulders down at me, yeah.
You almost froze to death in the water?
I almost froze to death. I had been in water most of the day, and then I was so tired, I tried to go to sleep. The train went by, it blew the whistle and scared the hell out of me. And I think that's what woke me up.
That's what made sure that you didn't die.
Yeah.
And every time that you did this, you said you broke out 24 times.
Yes.
Every time that you would go out, you'd get caught and they'd put you back in that hole, put you back in that cell.
Eventually, once I got to St. John's, they would catch me, whether it be 2 or 3 days or a week later. They always caught me and brought me back and put me back in the cell.
And even the cost of what you were going to face was worth it to try and get out.
It was worth every bit of it.
Yeah. Lisa, what did you learn about what life was like? I mean, what struck you the most about what life was like for Jack there?
Well, I grew up in St. John's, and I had lived through the breaking story of Mount Cashel, which devastated most of the families I knew. This
is the orphanage that was, tied to horrific stories of sexual abuse of young boys.
That's right. And I knew Father Jim Hickey, a family friend who sexually assaulted many boys. I was Catholic myself. I didn't know about Whitburn. I didn't know about solitary confinement. And I don't think most people knew about it. There was a fire in another institution for girls. And when that building burned, the journalists found those isolation cells and were shocked. So, but of course, on the other hand, I think many people knew and looked away. It's easy to look away when there's no oversight, and there was no oversight. And in writing this story with Jack, and my sister, Lynn Moore, is a lawyer who was also had a class action suit against Whitburn. I was always astonished by the evilness of the guards. But Jack and Lynn and Brittany, I think, were more interested in the systemic, bureaucratic evil of those politicians and social workers and directors and people who did not, who looked away.
One of the things that you were told as you were writing the book was, in some ways, the horror of everything wasn't being captured. What did you take from that? I mean, as a writer, what did you take from that comment, that note?
Well, it was easy to lean into the more positive aspects of the story. Jack and Brittany and Glennis and Nicholas have this powerful family that are just deeply, there's a lot of love there. And Glennis and Jack were, Glennis really supported Jack. And he said his wife, Glennis, saved his life. And Jack is a good storyteller. So when he would tell stories of running, they had the feel of an adventure. And it was just easier to go there, because what can you say about a time and place where nothing moves and nothing happens for a total period of 2 years? And I'm talking about the isolation cell. How could we write that? And in fact, the truth was, I was afraid of it. I was really afraid of that cell. I was very afraid of that cell and what it meant about being human, that a child was kept in there.
You mentioned running away all those times, and one of the times that you ran away was to Mount Cashel, right?
Yes, that's right.
Your mother had said that your little brothers were there, and so you ran, that they were 5 and 7, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So why did you go there?
Well, I had received a phone call from my mom in Whitburn's telling me that my 2 little brothers were starting to get in trouble. They had stolen my sister's wedding rings while she got out of the bath, sold them for 10 cents apiece. So she took them and put them in, on the advice of a priest, Catholic priest. She took them and put them in Mount Cashel. When she told me that on the phone, I said, I gotta get out of here. I said to myself, I gotta get out of here and I gotta go get those boys, right?
Why did you say that?
Because I had known what was happening in Mount Cashel for years. Personally, I knew the main characters that were involved in the Mount Cashel scandal. And I went to Mount Cashel and demanded to see him, and he told me, no, you can't see him, and I kept persisting to see him. The brothers tried to stop me, but I told them that whoever wants to try and stop me, come and do it, because those boys are leaving with me, right?
And so you got them out of there?
Yes.
Why do you think, given everything that you were going through, I mean, you're in this awful place yourself, why do you think it was so important for you to get there to help them?
I was old enough to know the difference. They weren't. Probably 14, I don't know, could have been 15, but they were just 5 and 7. So I had to get them out of there before something happened to them.
Knowing Mount Cashel yourself, when you heard that story, I mean, it's astonishing in the book. What went through your mind?
I knew about Mount Cashel after this story broke, and it just was so clear because I had grown up with some of those boys and, could see that there was something wrong, but didn't know what it was. So when I heard about Jack going in there and taking the children out, like what? And taking on all those brothers, like it was a powerful institution. It's an amazing story, and it really is emblematic of Jack's whole life, I think, like really fighting back against these institutions. You
said something earlier that I think is interesting, and just that you didn't know, but everybody knew what was going on in these institutions. What is that about?
Well, I guess the belief in the Catholic Church was so powerful, it was difficult to really imagine that the rumors and the sort of strange behavior of some of the boys who were clearly harmed, it was difficult to believe what the truth was.
And that even beyond the church, that the state, such as it would harm young boys like this, whether it's at Mount Cashel or at Whitburn.
The level of rot throughout the entire system was a tremendous shock to most people. It was a shock to know that there were judges involved and lawyers and police officers and social workers, and people knew things. I'm talking about as a young adult, I half guessed, but also didn't know. These people actually knew. They had stories. It's astonishing how easy it is to look away, and how it protects people's careers. It protects their pocketbooks. They go home to their families. That's what I mean about people knew and didn't know. The average person probably didn't really know, but the people in power knew.
I'm speaking with the author Lisa Moore and Jack Whalen. The book that they worked on together is called Invisible Prisons. And sitting with us at the table is Jack's daughter, Brittany Whalen. Brittany, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you.
What is it like for you to listen to these stories of what your dad went through?
I think it's heartbreaking. It's powerful and it's important to tell, but it is absolutely gut-wrenching to hear this. But I'm very proud of my dad for coming forward and telling his story so that hopefully we can learn from the past and something like this never happens again. And I'm so grateful for Lisa for helping to elevate his voice and reach so many people. When
you were growing up, how much of this were you aware of?
I always knew that my dad had demons, but I didn't know why.
What did that? Do you mind me asking? Like, what did that look like? You used the word demons. When the demons would surface.
Often, people who suffer severe childhood trauma have difficulties with emotional regulation. So you would see just a heightened fight or flight response. Something small might set them off or trigger displays of anger, being emotionally withdrawn. and had difficulties meeting new people and making friends because I think of those years spent in isolation.
He's also really protective of you.
Incredibly protective of me. We weren't allowed to have babysitters or sleepovers, and we had strict curfews, and I'm grateful today for that. But at the time, I remember thinking it was so unfair. But I didn't actually learn about what happened and hear it from both parents until I was 16. I had asked my dad for help with my homework, and he refused. So I went to my mom and I said, "What's with Dad? Why is he never helping me with my homework?" And I learned it's actually because he wasn't able to. My dad went into the Whitburn Boys' Home with grade 6 education, and when he left, he still had grade 6 education. My dad, that said, is an incredibly smart man. He's very self-taught. It was hard to imagine that he could come so far with just a grade 6 education, because on our street, he was the person that everybody came to for help with anything mechanical or needed help fixing or building anything. He's your guy.
When you learned the details of this, this changed your life. I say that knowing that it would change anybody's life, but it changed the trajectory of your life, right?
Absolutely.
How did it do that?
When I learned about what had happened to him and that there was never anything done about it, that he had not received any justice, compensation, or closure, and that it was just swept under the rug, I was completely horrified. So I had made a promise to myself that I would go to law school and become a lawyer to take on this case. I knew at that time that it was going to be an uphill battle. Even at that time, the statute of limitations, the time period to come forward had run out. So I knew I was going to either have to find a loophole or change the law. And I'm pleased to say that's just what we did.
Why do you think you were so compelled? Going to law school is one thing. Deciding that you're going to go to law school in some ways to get the justice that your father couldn't get, that's a big step.
I think it's twofold. On the one hand, I don't think I had a choice. Trauma is passed down from generation to generation until somebody decides to break the cycle. And I knew that if this didn't come out, if justice wasn't served, that it could just be repeated. I also knew that there were probably many other children who were affected and that their children would be affected, and so on and so forth. I also knew that my dad and my mom had worked very, very hard to give me a life that they didn't have, that I had opportunities that they didn't have, like the ability to access education, and that I could use that to empower myself to make a difference, to give my dad the justice, the compensation and closure that he deserved, and to try and bring about positive change and reform.
Jack, when you learned that she was going to do this, that she was going to go to law school to take up your fight, what did that mean to you? She said that she's proud of you. You must have been so proud of her.
I was and still am. Still am quite fond that she would do this for me. Right?
You did this amazing thing as this was unfolding, where you built a reproduction of the cell that you were held in.
That's right, yes.
You put it in the back of your pickup truck, and
yes.
You drove it all over this country.
Yeah, so it's the same size as the actual cell I was in, so it was perfect.
Why did you do that?
I was thinking about how do I get the message out there of what it was like, and jokingly said I should build a replica of the cell. Everybody laughed, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, that's a good idea. Just went from there. I went home, built a cell, and I think it brought a lot of recognition to what I was trying to do, right?
Because it showed where you were. This is the size of the place that I was held in.
That's right, yeah.
You sat in that cell?
I did, yes, on our last visit to Newfoundland. I had put off going inside that cell for as long as possible, but we needed to get some photos taken. I was quite afraid of going inside. I'm a little bit claustrophobic. Maybe that's one of the things that got passed down through the generations. Surprisingly, when I got inside, my dad was in there waiting for me, and I was okay because he was by my side, and I always feel safe and secure when I have my dad next to me. I know he's got my back, and I just wish that the young Jack Whalen had somebody to care for him like that, someone to protect him, make him feel safe.
Jack, what was that moment like when the petition to change the statute of limitations was read out? What was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was very uplifting. I was shocked, in awe. I mean, I kind of figured it was going to happen, but I didn't figure it was going to happen that quickly.
It was a fight, too, to get to that point, right?
It was quite a fight to
get people to actually pay attention.
But once they did, it just happened very quickly.
Yeah. You were there watching, Lisa, as this was happening.
Jack had asked me to find petitions, too. He was in Oshawa. I was in, signatures. And I called him proudly and told him, I said, I have 20 signatures. And he said, beautiful. And I said, how many do you have? And he said, 900 from Oshawa. And so with so many signatures, you get your petition read out several times, once for every full page of signatures. And the politicians in the House of Assembly talked through it.
Signed Christmas cards.
Yeah, signed Christmas cards, looked at their phones, watched sports games. I have to say this is not just Newfoundland where this happens. But one of the politicians who was reading out the petition said, and this is Jack's last day here because he's ill. He has to return to Oshawa for chemotherapy. He has been here with his whole family in the gallery. And it was... It was astonishing. When anyone who's gone to the House of Assembly knows you're not even allowed to bend forward. And at one point, Jack was bending forward to look at the floor. Like, I'm just talking a little tiny angle. And, the guard asked him to sit back. We weren't allowed to have our phones. The behavior, I'm 60 years old. My innocence was stolen at that moment. I kind of believe in democracy. And of course, it worked out in the end. The politicians came together. The whole House of Assembly rose to applaud Jack in a standing ovation. And they worked together in kind of unprecedented way. But I think that's a tribute to Jack.
To him.
My dad actually made the decision to postpone starting chemotherapy to be there for the reading of those petitions. He had started this journey before being diagnosed with both multiple myeloma and a rare deadly disease called AL amyloidosis. And my dad is a man of his word. When he says he's going to do something, he does it. So he had made a commitment to do everything in his power to change this law and see it through to the end. So he postponed chemo to be there. And I think that made it particularly upsetting when MHAs were not being respectful and listening to the reading of these petitions. And
it was a pretty heartbreaking moment. I think Jack just has such tremendous tenacity and strength. He was very sick. It's the kind of courage that we hope we have when we have to fight things.
Legally, what has changed?
The Newfoundland and Labrador government has eliminated the limitation period, the statutory limitation period for cases involving child physical abuse and trespass to the person, which might include things like solitary confinement. And it also addressed domestic or intimate partner violence as well and removed the limitation period for that. So as it stands, there's only one province left, New Brunswick, that still has a limitation period.
Was there an apology that Jack got as that legal hurdle was overcome?
There's never been an official formal apology, no.
Is that something that you would want, Jack?
Couldn't hurt.
It couldn't hurt. What would it mean for you to get an apology from the government, given what you've gone through?
I think it would be nice, but I'm not holding my breath.
And you're still in a fight with the federal government?
Yes, we are in court toward the end of next month. We're just looking to postpone so that my dad can focus on his health and healing and recovering right now.
Having gone through all of this, Jack, what specifically are you looking for?
I was just looking to change the law, and so people don't have to go through this again. We've done that. My case has been through the courts. We've reached a settlement, so I'm done there. Right now, I'm just looking to get my health back.
This is a story about you and what you've gone through, the people who have supported you as well. It says in the book that this is a love story as well. Her name has come up a number of times in this conversation.
That's right.
Tell me about Glynis.
Well, I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for Glynis. So she's the one that changed my life, told me that I was going to amount to be something, and I wasn't going to be in jail my whole life like they told me in the boys' home. And she was right about that too. So, yeah, she's pretty smart.
You started out as a collaborator on this project, and then you became a friend, and now they refer to you as family.
Yes, and the other way around too. They're my family.
What is that like?
I've recognized through this project the power that writing can have, especially if it's collaborative, to allow people to speak who don't always get a chance to speak. Like there is an opportunity to, I don't want to sound Pollyanna, but to make the world a better place. I think this book has the potential to do that. Is the more hands it gets into, the more people realize the kinds of changes that need to be made, particularly in prison systems. I think there's real hope for what sharing voices can do.
That's really powerful to think about.
I'm very grateful for both the working relationship and the I'm going to go ahead and say the love between us, Jack and his family, because I think that's what happens. That's what happens when you engage this deeply.
For you, Jack, just finally, I mean, these are hard stories to go back to. There is a part of you, I'm sure, that might want to put that away. And yes. Here you are talking about it in a book. You're talking about it to us. What would you want this book to do?
Well, I would educate people mostly of what happened way back when. And hopefully it doesn't happen again.
It's really quite something to speak with you all. It's a really powerful story, but the interaction between all three of you and how you talk to each other and how you look at each other and how everybody's kind of holding each other up is quite something as well. Yeah. Thank you very
Matt.
much. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Jack Whalen spent 4 years at the Whitburn Boys' Home in Newfoundland. His daughter, Brittany Whalen, is leading his legal fight, and their story is told in a new book that Jack wrote with the great author Lisa Moore. It is called Invisible Prisons, Jack Whalen's tireless fight for justice. Earlier this year, Jack reached a settlement with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador for the abuse he suffered and the 2 years he spent in solitary confinement. We contacted that government to ask whether it intends to formally apologize to Jack Whalen. We did not receive a response.